Today's guests on Adversity to Strengths, I'm lucky to have the most impossible story to believe and even harder to forget. Deana and Lizzie were both married to the same toxic, predatory man, not at the same time, but to the same person who lived a double life, but on lies, manipulation, and emotional abuse. What began as a shocking coincidence turned into a powerful mission. After discovering each other's experiences, they joined forces to warn a third woman and now use their story to help others recognize the red flags of narcissistic abuse, toxic relationships before it's too late. Through brutal honesty, courage, and even moments of dark humor, they've turned their trauma into advocacy and their pain into purpose. This is a story about survival, solidarity, and reclaiming power. Ladies, thank you so much for taking time out and coming on to the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
No problem at all. Where did your journeys start?
2018. 2018.
2018.
Okay. Well, our journey started. I was married to a very toxic narcissist who also had a sex addiction, financial abuse, and you just fill in the blank. All the other things, manipulation, gaslighting. He was excellent at it. And for 27 years, we stayed together, but, I never quite knew what was going on or what the problem was or why he was doing these things. Back then, you didn't have any kind of definition for the problems that he had, right? And we were very faith-based. And so, we would go to these trusted leaders in the church and they would just say that, he had an immaturity problem or he had a sin problem and that he would get better over time. And they would tell him what to do. And they would kind of just, admonish me to just keep doing the right things and being a good wife, etc. Well, about every 3 years, I would pack up and leave because things would get so bad to where I just couldn't handle it anymore. I would catch him in the act of doing something, or, our finances were in horrible shape. We filed bankruptcy twice during that time. And he always found ways to get me back. He had the most incredible manipulative tactics and even brought in my family and my friends, people that I loved, to say that, he's so sorry. He's really a good guy at his heart. He doesn't mean to do these things. He needs you to help him get better. So you need to stay. And, we had 4 children together. So that complicated everything. Wow. And I would go back after some time, really thinking that he had changed. He would be sobbing and crying and begging and pleading and promising everything under the sun. And I would just believe him. So fast forward 27 years later, I finally couldn't do it anymore. And the kids were grown and there was really no reason anymore to stay. So I left. And at that point, it was a very peaceful exit and on my behalf. I didn't have any more questions, any more concerns. At this point, he started actually having affairs, not just little illicit encounters. And I was done. Well, then he immediately goes and finds beautiful Lizzie here. And they were married for 6 years. So she became the stepmother to my 4 children who were grown at the time. But, they would still, some of them would come and visit their dad. So I didn't know Lizzie at all, but my kids would tell me that she was a really good woman and that he had, and they knew about him and they knew the kinds of things he would do. And they were like, Mom, she's a good lady and you should probably tell her. And I just said, you guys, she's just going to think I'm the crazy ex. Like, I can't. That's going to make everything awkward and strange, probably cause problems with her, with me, with your dad. I'm not going to do that. So 6 years, Lizzie's married to him. And she finally decides there's weird stuff going on. Things don't add up. Something's wrong. And she leaves. And at that point, my son reached out to me and said, Mom, you should probably call Lizzie. I think you guys should connect. She's leaving dad. And I think it's time that you let her know the story because she needs to understand, what's really happening. Because, there are a lot of dots missing here, in the picture that Lizzie was trying to put together, but she knew something was wrong because she had a toxic marriage the first time. And so she knew there was something off. And so we became the best friends. We bonded. I told her everything. It really validated me to see that it wasn't just me that he was doing these things to. And it also really validated her so that she could kind of, again, fill in those unexplainable situations. And so then Lizzie was leaving him. And when she was going to get her things, she found this box and she opened it up and there were all these cards and letters from another woman. And when she looked at the dates, because there were dates, pictures, everything, she found out that he had actually been making an entire family with another woman in a nearby city for almost a year while he was married with Lizzie, which is why Lizzie kept feeling like things were just wrong and off and something was going on. So he was living a complete double life. And so at that point, Lizzie and I just were like, we've got to find this woman, because we knew that as soon as Lizzie was divorced from him, he would run and marry this third lady. And yes, and just act like nothing had happened. So we set out on this crazy adventure to go find this woman. And it took us a while to find her. And once we finally found her, it was kind of an incredible moment where it had been months where we were just both desperate, to find her. And just, like, it was like you wanted to save somebody. It was like you're like, nobody ever saved you from this. Yeah. So you had this passion to save somebody else. And we were just impassioned to do that. And so we found her on Facebook, and we could tell immediately she was a wonderful lady, had several kids as well, just a good person. We didn't see him on Facebook, so we weren't sure if they're still together, but we knew that she was a great person. So after several months, we finally gave up because nobody was answering our messages. We couldn't really find anybody that she knew. She was a town over from Lizzie, so Lizzie didn't really know anybody there. And so I just left this random message on Facebook where hoping she'd find it one day. And I just said, listen, if you ever find this, we want you to know, we call her Jane. We want you to know, Jane, that Lizzie and I, we can tell that you're a really good person. And we probably know for sure that you had no idea that this man was married when you were with him. So when you find this, we just want you to know that if you would like to call and talk to us, you can. We hold nothing against you, and we're there for you either way. And that was very simple. I just left it at that.
Yeah.
Heard nothing at all for over 6 weeks, maybe a couple of months. And then all of a sudden, one day I get a phone call, and it's in the worst possible time. I'm on my way to do a breast cancer awareness speaking event, and I'm one of the speakers. I worked for a hospital at the time, and I am literally running late, and I have not prepared adequately. So I'm zooming in the car trying to get there. And here comes this phone call, the coveted phone call that Lizzie and I have been dying for months. Here it goes. And I'm like, don't answer it. Don't answer it. Don't answer it. I answered it.
You gotta answer it.
I had to. And there was this voice, this confused woman who said, is this Deana? And I said, yes. She said, I found the weirdest message. I don't understand it. I'm very confused. I need you to explain it to me. And I said, okay, Jane, first of all, you know that I was married to Rex. We call him Rex, our ex. She said, yes, I do. I know about you. I know about your kids. And she said, who is Lizzie? She didn't even know Lizzie existed. When he told the story to her, he had cut Lizzie out completely and said that he had been single for 6 years. And so when I told her that, she immediately goes into full-fledged panic. And she said, wait a minute. Where do they live? What's going on? What is this? And so I told her that they lived, about a town away. And she said, you mean that house where he's taking care of the elderly couple? That's him and his wife's house? Yeah, there's no elderly couple. That was he and Lizzie's home where they lived. She's like, you mean the red coat I'm wearing right now is actually his wife's coat? He said it was a gift from the lady he was taking care of. I said, no, there is no lady. Yes, that's probably Lizzie's coat. So she goes in this full-on panic and starts putting these pieces together, realizing that there was nobody. So at that moment, her son was on a trip with him, a motorcycle trip, because her kids were grown as well. She starts panicking because now she doesn't know who this man is. He's off on an out-of-state motorcycle trip with her son, and now she doesn't even know who he is and if he would hurt her child. She's freaking out. So it took a minute to calm her down, that he's crazy, but he's not that kind of crazy. And then she started putting pieces together, and then, of course, she needed to call Lizzie. So she and Lizzie connected, and I'll let Lizzie finish the story. But the crazy fun part for me that was so interesting at the time was that he would give these stories like, he was out doing Uber. He would tell Lizzie that he was out doing Uber to raise some extra money. And then he would tell Jane that, he was working out at the gym, and that's why he wasn't around. And then he would also tell her that he wouldn't take her in his home because out of respect for the elderly couple, he didn't want to, bother them. They were very sickly. And then he would tell her that he wasn't spending the night at her house, at Jane's house, because he wanted to be respectful. She was a woman of faith. And he didn't want to do that in front of her children, spend the night. So he would use all these stories. I had this whole double life going on, and it was absolutely mind blowing. And so when she and Lizzie connected, Lizzie, I'll let you take it over to tell some of those stories.
Well, first of all, to kind of go back on Jane did do a background check on Rex, and I never showed up. So I commended her for that, but I was very fascinated with the fact that I didn't show up after 6 years of marriage.
That's a lot of effort for you not to show up.
Exactly. It boggles my mind still to this day, because that's one thing I said would encourage people to do after this is to do a background check. But if a person doesn't show up, how do you follow through? So the next thing that happened was she called me, and a lot of pieces of the puzzle kind of came together with me before this moment. But when she talked to me, I just remember just this finally, because I could tell you that for me, and I think even for Deana too, this was such a main focus of our life. It was almost to the point that it controlled me, to the point I felt like I was crazy. Like I had to find her, because something in me told me she needed to know whether she wanted to believe me or not. That was up to her, but something told me she needed to know. So when we started talking and her story unfolded, my story unfolded, then she would send me pictures of her and Rex at the same time that I showed her text messages while he was standing right next to her that he was sending me. And I know that I started experiencing a lot of the abandonment became a lot different. Like, man, I feel kind of like scum, even though I knew it wasn't me. That wasn't me problem, but it's so hard for me to control those emotions. So in that, the whole unraveling of his duplicity through hearing her stories, my stories, and combining them, we found out she had married him literally like 6 weeks before she found that specific Facebook message, which is interesting because Deana sent it like on June 1st and she married him June 2nd. So it took her 6 weeks to find that in her Facebook Messenger. And at that point, she started just like diving in. She met with her lawyer the next day. So imagine she found out on a Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, she contacted her lawyer. And after contacting her lawyer, she filed for annulment, which I commend her. She could have just said, no, everything's so great. Because she said, we were just laughing.
Yeah. It's the easiest thing in the world is to bury your head and go, who's these crazy? And then ignore the evidence and just carry on. And if she did that, she'd be paying a costly price down the line.
Exactly. And I think because she had a very rough first marriage as well, she was kind of carrying a lot of the shame and the guilt like instantaneously. So, I mean, she was impacted with so much emotion within 24 hours, whereas then I knew since like May and now it's July. So I had time to kind of process all this. Yes, I didn't have all the details. And then there was times I really didn't need to know the details, but it was important for her to share me details. And so they were on that motorcycle trip and she got that annulment. She had, before he even pulled up into the driveway, she had police officers lined on the driveway, his car packed full of all his stuff. She had the annulment papers served and she had a restraining order. And she annulled him that same, I'm like, her annulment went through right away. And he already tried calling her pastor. And her pastor was like, no, you need to leave because this is not.
When did he realize what had happened? When he pulled up and he sees stuff packed? Was that then?
Yep.
Right.
With the police.
With the police. So he's turned up there. I've had this, hi, honey, I'm home.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and she had been communicating with him and she kind of has this cute little sense of humor. She's very Southern, adorable. And she was just like, I just told him that I've got a meatloaf in the oven and mashed potatoes simmering on the stove.
Yeah, I'm earlier.
In reality, she had police officers and his car packed.
She was a hairdresser in a little town. She was a hairdresser. She cut everybody's hair, everybody's mom, everybody's grandma, everybody's cousin, and she knew all the authorities. So all it took was one little phone call for this little sassy lady, and she knew everybody, and they all were in her corner.
That's good to know. It's good to know because you know yourselves that often that can be quite rare, the case that somebody will deal with it in that way that quickly. And you feel, listening to it, you feel relief. How often do you hear the opposite, the denial side, So what did he say when he turned up? And I can just imagine it. It's obviously very American. You got all these flashing lights there, police there, and that's my picture. I mean, what did he say when he picked up?
Oh, you're going to love this.
Oh, go on, go on.
He said, you must have talked to Lizzie. There's two sides to the story. And when I heard that, when Jane told me, I laughed. I was like, I looked at Deana. I remember we were talking because we were talking nonstop at that point. I said, what two sides are there? You lied, you cheated, and you just decimated two families right away in one, like two birds, or what is it? One bird, two stones kind of thing. Yeah, two birds with one stone. Whatever. I'm like, my stuff is out the window, but it was just amazing that he had the nerve in front of the police, and they had her stay in the house, and he pretty much yelled it. There's two sides to the story. To this day, I still giggle about it because that's just so narcissistic. I mean, that is such a narcissistic thing to say. So he tried staying in the town, or in the area, probably outside of that town, probably the town that he and I lived in, because at that point, a lot of people didn't know what was going on. And I had already left the state because I actually, for the first time, was very scared for my life because I realized that I did not know him. And when you realize you don't know somebody and he owns a gun, and I had lost a friend from domestic violence who never was beaten. There was no ever bruises. It was because she was leaving. So I realized I did not know this person whatsoever. Yeah. And I think that is why Deana went ahead and didn't message her until I left the state. And then she and I started collaborating because he kind of worked in a security situation. And she was like, he has no business owning a gun. So she was trying to contact his supervisor, and she knew that she had my backing. And at the same time, what was going to happen, he found out about it and he fled the state. And he went to be with his sisters in another state.
Yeah, so he ran off to his sister's house in a whole nother state immediately and married one of their friends immediately. So Jane, now we're kind of us three ladies are together. So Jane she's like, oh, heck no. So she hops on Facebook, finds this lady and messages her and says, you have to understand who this person is. You have to understand what he's done. She just put this long message, explaining to her everything he had done, all the deceptions, all the money that he was trying to get her to spend on a boat, and, let's get a new house and let's do this. And, already like taking over one of her credit cards and all the things. And this lady just looked at her, or not looked at her, but on Facebook, this lady said, you know what? He told me you're crazy. And he told me some of the things that you've said and some of the things you've done. And even looking at this rant right here, you look like you're crazy. So you can just jump off a bridge, basically. She didn't believe her at all. And it was sad. We were all pretty sad about that, because we could have tried to help, but she married him immediately. So even by the time I think we caught up with her, she'd already married him. So we had no choice. We just had to let it go. But about 2 years later, she reached out. She'd found me. She even found one of my kids, and we'll call her Sally. Sally reached out on Facebook and said, I'm so sorry. I need to apologize. I'm so sorry. Please tell Jane. I don't have her contact information, but tell her also that I'm so sorry. I was so wrong. She said, I felt something was off, and I got his phone, and he was talking to 27 different women on his phone, 27 different women trying to get with him in one way or another. And she said, there's even one woman in New York whose husband found out that they were communicating, and the husband got mad and started communicating. Rex said, listen, she's a good woman, and if you don't take care of her, I'm going to swoop her away from you. I mean, that's how arrogant this guy is. So yeah, she was just devastated that, this had happened. But here's the thing is that Lizzie and I, made ourselves completely available to her to help her, because we know how good he is at getting you back. Even when you've seen things that are shocking that you can't believe you would ever put up with. He's so good. Every single thing you can possibly imagine that would be a manipulation tactic and to grab your emotions, he uses. And it took no time at all, and she had gone back to him. And so that was that. We got cut off, and Lizzie and I don't know how she's doing today. We just hope the best.
You know how she's doing today. The question is at what stage is she going to escape from it? narcissists that are predictable. It's the same pattern, the distorted, warped view of the world. The ones for apart from there's no accountability, always looking for a new supply, go back to they're all the same there as well. But you can't, it's good that you both realize your limitations, because you want to help and save other people and kind of get them to see the wood from the trees, because it's obviously they just get caught up in that world of everything there as well. But it's great what you're doing. It's only so much you can do. But I mean, I'd love to know his background, if he come, not that he would, but his like sort of childhood, because as a therapist you would be able to predict. I could see that's where that's come from there. So, as you know, somebody with low self-esteem, low self-worth, absolute self-loathing on the outside, all bravado and all these empty promises. And also with yourselves, you were the dream. I'm guessing that in his eyes, that you were the dream person that would solve all of his problems. And then when he realized you're just a normal person, that's when the love bombing stopped. I'm kind of guessing. And then somebody else.
Well, I think, well, for me, I mean, the love bombing was continuous all the way through the relationship,
Really?
you know? Yeah. Well, because, you know, I would try to draw boundaries and say, listen, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm dealing with here. I'm so confused. I was 17 when I married him, so I was just a kid,
right.
you know, and I was so confused as to what I was dealing with here. And, you know, the love bombing was used because I draw that line in the sand and say, whatever this is and whatever your issues are, like they have to stop. Like, this is not going to be okay. I'm not going to stay with you like this. And so
his excuses? What was his excuses?
Well, he claimed he was molested as a kid, then later told me he lied and made it up. So that was one. The other ones were, you know, that he just felt like he wouldn't really come up with his own. He would let other people give them to him. I think that's where he was so good. The molestation was the only one that he came up with on his own. The other ones were, we'd go to somebody for counseling, and then that person would feed something and say, oh, well, you're probably dealing with this. You know, you probably just are, you know, if it was in a faith-based context, it was, you're spiritually immature. You know, you need to read your Bible more. You need to grow you know what I mean? You need to grow that part of your character, because that's the part that's weak. So do all the things, go to church more, read your Bible more, you know what I mean? Grow your spiritual part. And then if he went to a therapist, it would be like, oh, well, you have a sex addiction, you know, and of course they would give him reasons why he might have that, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So he would just use whatever was given to him, but he got so good at it. And here's where I think that sometimes narcissists can be very deceitful, because they don't wear the same colors as other narcs that you've met. If they start getting better and better at understanding how to disguise it. And what happened was, every time we went to therapy or counseling or anything like that, he would take that information and get better at his craft. And so instead of crying and making excuses, he would just start admitting everything he had done and weeping and just saying, I can't believe I did this. But he wouldn't ever admit it until he was caught. And that's the red flag that I should have noticed when I was younger. It wasn't like he'd come to me when he was struggling or, you know, having, you know, a hard time. He would wait until I caught him, and then suddenly the tears would flow, and what, this is going to get better. What do I need to do? What do you want me to do, Deana? I'll do anything you want me to do to change. What should I do? And then I would hand him something that I felt like he should do, and then he would go do it until I came back, you know, or for maybe a month or two. And then, of course, just, you know, forget all about it. So, you know, when someone is making promises and those promises turn into dust the minute that they get what they want, like you coming back, or when someone is super sad about their behavior and wants to change, only when they get caught. Two big red flags to look for.
Yeah. And to be fair, like, I think of Deana's story is really different. She's had 27 years. I had 6 years. And I always told Deana, I said, he went through a lot of training with you. So by the time he got to me, he was really good, because he wooed me I was a single mom with 4 kids. Their dad was AWOL. That's a whole different story. And, you know, single mom working full time. He came along and swooped in. He immersed himself into my life. He was a great chameleon, like Deana said. So obviously, he went so many therapy sessions, so to speak, that by the time we were dating and married, he was easy and comfortable. And it was harder because I didn't know the past to really kind of dig in a lot more. Everything did happen fast, so that's a red flag. How fast does it go?
Oh, yeah.
And he was really good, even like being loving with me emotionally, you know, whatever, for a long time. And it wasn't until like almost the 6-year mark where I thought, okay, I got locked out of my Verizon account. I got locked out of other accounts. His behavior started to get really weird. And it was a different ending. I don't think I really went through the emotional abuse that Deana did. I think mine went through shock, like a lot of shock factor. Like, I can't believe I didn't see these signs because I went through so much abuse in my first marriage. I was looking through that lens that I didn't know that there was other lenses I needed to look through. And I think that's why I became passionate that toxicity comes in many different ways and forms. And we really have to learn those red flags because, like I said, he was so charming. I mean, even my dad, who was a very discerning man, really liked him. And he would go hang out with my dad every Friday when he was off and they would do, nice things together. My dad was really touched by the relationship. So he was good for me. It was just, but it looked different.
Yeah. When did you realize something wasn't right with the guy? Because with a lot of people, one of the areas I work in as a therapist is relationships, and I get clients to try and recognize red flags and not ignore them. And I say it all the time. People make the mistakes, and we've all done it. Is not what's in front of you, the reality and the red flags. We're focusing on what the dream might be in the future. And we're ignoring the red flags, and we end up getting involved in a relationship which never turns out how we're expecting it to, things like that. When did you first realize this isn't right? Something's not right. It's gone wrong.
Truthfully, I think I'm pretty ashamed because I made excuses because emotionally he was filling my cup. And it wasn't until 2 years later that I learned, he always told me that he and Deana were divorced for 2 years before he even met me. And I found out that wasn't the case 2 years later. And he wanted to make sure I knew before I met his kids. Like, I met a couple of them, but like really got involved in their life because I think he sensed that if he didn't tell me the truth, then, who knows what could happen with the relationship. But he told me I loved you so much that I was afraid if I told you the truth that I wasn't divorced when we met, that you wouldn't have stayed with me, because I wouldn't have. Because I was so afraid of making a wrong choice the second time that was always one of my first questions. Are you still married? I mean, I'd rather you be honest, and I would not, like, they didn't know what was coming, like, but normally would be get through the divorce first, call me back in a year, kind of thing. Yeah. And then it wasn't until we got back, we both worked in the education system, so to speak. I've been an educator for a couple of decades. And so I had summers off and we had a motorcycle. So we made a trip. My last summer, 2018, we made this trip from the East Coast to the West Coast for 2 months. One of the best trips, one of the best summers of my life. So I'm in this euphoria. I'm like happy. And all of a sudden, when we got back, things got really weird. And then that's when the red flags started to come up. That's when I got locked out. That's when he'd be gone on Sundays and Saturday nights, saying he was with another coworker and he was, working on a relationship. And then I'd be like, well, why can't I meet them? And he would be like, well, 3 just doesn't work, and I'd be like, that's strange. So soon after that, I did leave. I didn't know that I was going to follow through with a divorce until I tried to get into my Verizon account, our Verizon account. And I said, how do I get into our Verizon account? And he said, why? What do you need to know? I said, well, it's both of our accounts, so why can't I get into it? And he kept refusing to give me the account. And I said, oh, so you're talking to another woman? Because I had just had my first conversation with Deana. So Deana started to unfold her own journey. And things started to come out. And so when I asked him that, and he goes, well, what if I am talking to somebody else? I said, okay, thank you. Because I had already been meeting with a lawyer for to check into the financial separation. Like, I wanted to protect myself, but I still had this hope that my marriage would make it. But I had already left my husband, the same like Deana, like 6, 7 times before I divorced him 14 years later. Yeah. So I understood this journey, and I'm like, I've been here. I ain't going here again. And so that separation turned into a full-fledged divorce, like that fast, like within an hour kind of thing. And that was actually when my red flags, I went to a therapist before I left that state. And she was like, you're not present. There was probably red flags from the beginning. And that was really hard, for me to embrace, especially when I'm really passionate about abuse and abuse awareness and losing a friend and the abuse I went through in my first marriage. And I was like, I am present. And then It took a while for me to say, yeah, I'm not. I wasn't 100% present, and there were red flags, and I probably just didn't.
Everyone's done it. It's whether it's just the difference is what's the level of consequences are for it. And obviously for you guys, it's been like, you know, high, and he's like a real narcissist where he's so insecure he can't be on his own, and he needs this stability of a new fix. And somebody's always the thing is with a narcissist, there's always people waiting, and there's always the ones that you can go back to there as well. So I think it's great that you guys have had so much strength. And I know you give yourself a hard time how many times it takes to leave it, but even in like normal healthy relationships, it's still difficult. It's so difficult as well. But when you've got a narcissist that's gaslighting and manipulating you there as well, and also if you've put time, effort, money, love, emotion in, and you've come out of like previously like a toxic relationship, there's that part of you that still hope springs eternal, and maybe this, maybe that, until you're like, yeah, I've got nothing left.
Well said. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It definitely shocks you when you finally look at it for the first time, and it was there the whole time.
When did you realize with Deana talking to you, and what was the moment where you thought this all makes sense now, and suddenly you can see everything for what it is?
Deana was so transparent that I fully trusted her in the things she had to say. And then I already was locked out of different things and accounts because I had moved out. And I remember our first conversation, I think we were on the phone for 2.5 hours for the very first time. I may have been her kid's stepmom, but you normally aren't good friends with stepmoms, you know. And I just remember sitting on the floor and she's just unraveling some of her own journey. And I thought, some of this really is relatable. I get it. And I also went through bankruptcy with him. So you're talking about every 10 years he goes through bankruptcy, and he's so good at just putting you through it that you feel like you're part of the blame in how the money is being spent. And my first husband wouldn't pay anything. I didn't even get child support. So I was very cautious. And when you're married to someone like this, you end up in that same road of financial abuse. And it's like 1 minute it's there and the next minute it's gone. Yeah, definitely.
And I've spoke to other guests that have been in narcissistic relationships. Nearly always, I think actually every one of the ladies I spoke to, it's cost them financially.
Well, it seems like they're either, and I dated someone too who was the opposite side of the spectrum of narcissism. He was the Scrooge. He didn't like spending money on anything. He would argue over $40 kind of thing. And then you have the other side of the spectrum where they just don't keep money. They spend it flamboyantly. How are they going to spend it? So it's just interesting that finances do judge. It's like either one or the other. There's no middle ground with a narcissist and spending money.
Yeah. And so with both of you, you had so much, I mean, you guys both become experts in narcissists without even probably putting any effort into it. It's just figuring things out together. So obviously he's out of your life. You're also helping try and save some other lady. What were you guys sort of thinking? You're a lovely lady. I'm a nice person. Let's go for a coffee. What should we do with all of this? What was your thinking then? How did that come about? You're helping Lizzie recognize the reality of what she's going through. He's gone, and then it's like, well, she's a nice lady, I'm a nice lady. We've got all of this in common. Plus, we've been through this traumatic experience. Did you have any idea of we could channel this into something positive, or we just like all the best sort of thing, or let's stay in touch?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So Lizzie, I tell you what, the minute that little redhead down there, the minute that she decided that this was going to be over between her and Rex, she literally said, and when we found out about woman number 3, and then he ran woman number 4, even before that, Lizzie said, Deana, my story is going to get told. She just knew it in her bones. She's like, my story is going to get told, and you're coming with me. Our story is getting told, and we're going to do it together. And at the beginning, I thought I was just going to be, I don't know, we weren't sure what it would look like, but it ended up turning into a podcast. And then, of course, now we have a YouTube channel as well. We interview guests. We've had, I think, 70 something podcasts now. And then, our YouTube is a little bit newer, but we interview these guests that are amazing, like you. They're therapists, they've written books. They're almost all authors, or they've been through something like this. And it's turned into something really wonderful. We keep being told that our story is like a Lifetime movie and we need to write a book. And so we've already gone to a book writers conference. And so we will be writing a book probably sometime next year. We are starting groups for women coming up in February, just to give them a safe space, low cost, but a safe space to come together and talk about what they've been through and help them get some clarity with each other, because it is so confusing. I think that's one of the hardest parts about all of this is you're going through one of these relationships and you may not even know that you're with a narcissist, or you may not even know, you may not even recognize those things. You may not even know that those are abuse. Someone who drains your money is abuse. Someone who twists the story and it makes you question yourself is abuse. And so we want to help women because we didn't really have anybody when we were going through this. And you need clarity. It's the most confusing thing I have ever been through. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So that's kind of where we're at now. We've been at this now for a while, and we're both so grateful that we have this opportunity to just help somebody who's there.
Yeah, I think getting to meet you two ladies has been brilliant, because you seems like such an amazing combination together. You go together so well. And the way you tell the story, I mean, some people could tell it in a completely different way and it's just like soul destroying because of the nature of what it is, but you say it in like with the dark humor there as well. And I think so many people want to hear your story, and just listening to what you guys have been through, whether it's individually or collectively, and the way you've reached out to help other people, bearing in mind that whoever you speak to is going to assume that you're the crazy psycho exes. Oh my God, this guy's so unlucky. His last 10 exes, they're all psychos. And now they're messaging me saying crazy things, I think it'll inspire a lot of people. And I think people listening to the podcast and anything that you do will be able to relate to it. And like with this podcast, that's the whole point of it. People come on, tell their adversity, their stories they can relate to, and then feel inspired. And that's definitely the case listening to yourselves on there. What have you guys got planned for the future then? So you've got like obviously helping people out. You want to grow your podcast and get a book there as well. What else have you got in mind? It sounds like you guys are at the beginning of your journey together.
Well, it's been a long journey, but a short journey. I think, we've been talking about it since 2018. I think we both had a journey of life to live as we kept talking about it and preparing for it. Because in the beginning, I just thought, let's just have a blog, maybe go do some speaking stuff. And then Deana, because you could tell if you get to know us, which one's the extrovert, which one's the introvert, but that's what makes us work. We work really well together. And Deana's the one that said, let's do a podcast. And I was like, I wasn't sure about that, but I really do enjoy it. I've appreciated the beautiful souls that we have met on this journey. We also, because we have been in midlife, we both divorced Rex in midlife, even though, mine was afterwards. Deana still got divorced in her early 40s. And so we also started a reinvention, because we also know that there's like 3 phases when you're in abuse. It's leaving and exiting the relationship, the healing, which is the most important. But I think sometimes we don't really hyper focus on the reinvention, because if you don't have hobbies and you've been surviving in just little survival life mode, you don't know how to really reach out to that person inside of you to pull out what you like, what you don't like. Because when you marry that person, you may not like that thing that you did before you got married. You may find that you like something else. So how do you explore that? So we really wanted to not just focus on the healing component. I'm very passionate about educating people. And I know Deana is too, because she knows the trauma that it hit me when I lost my friend from domestic violence. So I always tell people, well, I haven't been in an abusive relationship. And I always say, that's okay. But I guarantee everybody's either been in the abusive relationship, will know someone that's going through abuse, or you're the actual perpetrator, predator, so to speak. The only way we can start like closing that gap. Because what is it? 4 people die a day from domestic violence. You have 1 man and 3 women. And if we don't start educating and realize the importance of that, we're going to keep that gap open. And the only way to close that gap is through domestic violence awareness. So I'm very passionate about the part of reaching people that have friends and family, because I'm like, that person that's going through abuse is probably not listening to this type of information.
Yes.
It's the people that have family or friends, or the person that said, well, I'm not in this relationship, not realizing that their sister may be going through it. Yeah. So that's kind of one area that we're really pushing. But I push, like I said, to the other listeners, not the actual person that's the victim. And then, of course, you have the healing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you're so right. And it's important because a lot of people make an assumption and people don't want to deal with it. People don't want to get involved in other people's relationships. They're like, they're had a big argument, don't know each, I'm sure they'll be all right, and then they just leave it and bury their heads. And I've had people on talking about like family members that's got like alcohol or drug problem. They don't know how to, the relatives don't know how to cope or help there as well. So I think that's really important. And for me, I've had clients where everything I'm telling them and pointing out why their partner is narcissistic, and she's, oh, you're saying exactly the same as all of my friends, but they just won't see it no matter what you say, even though everything you say to them makes perfect sense. They come with the excuses and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm very blunt as a therapist. And I'm like, I do this for a living. Here's the reasons to this, and this. And I give them all of the evidence. But it's just total denial. And so for me, I think sometimes you can't, there's only so much you can do, whether it's as a therapist or somebody that wants to try and support that person. You might have to support or help and educate the people around them, because they're more likely to want to learn. Well, how do we help our daughter, our sister, our auntie, or whatever?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so this journey has been great because I think we are unfolding as we're going along. And I think that's part of just growing ourselves. And that's the beauty of it. Like Deana said, we're getting close to also writing a book. We already have the outline of what we want. It's just, I'm working a full-time job. I have actually just circled the date. I'm going to quit my full-time job and do this. Thank you. It's not until September, so I have 10 months. So I'm like, Deana, we got to do a lot of planning. We got to get this out. Because, midlife, I mean, some people would think this is stupid. You're not supposed to do that. But I'm like, I want to do what I'm passionate about.
Exactly. If you do something you love, the difference between doing something you love and something you don't is just poles apart there. And also, I'll say, whether it's for myself, I'm doing different things that I want to do. I really want to grow the podcast and talk and speak out and stuff. So, you're only as young as you are today. What are you meant to do? Wait 5 years to be younger? It's not going to happen. So what are you meant to do? Life's short as it is. The fact that you're, taking the courage to go and do what you want to do. And also, I'm very much, what's the worst that could happen? I'm sure you could get your old job back if it all becomes a disaster, which it won't.
Yeah, I think they would take me back. There's such a need for special ed teachers. So it's like, exactly. Yeah, we'll take her back. Just as long as you don't burn your bridge at the end. Yeah. That's the key.
Definitely.
But I can't think of a better partner. Like you said, it's just Deana and I do mesh so well. We're not competitive with each other. We respect each other's strengths. And I think that's what makes us us. And I've been really thankful. And I know Deana too, because we don't fight over the same thing. We don't feel like, we feel like there's no I in anything. I do all the video editing. Deana has her strengths. I have mine. And it's still like, this is us. Like, even if I'm the one behind it, I'm still like, this is us. And she's the same way. And I think that's beautiful. And it also shows that in the darkest time of my life, whether I realized or not, there was already seeds being thrown. And there was a beautiful blossoming of a beautiful friendship. And as Deana said in the past, what Rex doesn't realize is that he gave me my best friend. And unfortunately, it took this, but I also look for the beautiful thing that came out of it. And actually, look at this. Nothing's going to go to waste. We got lots of great stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at what you've done with it. They do say that no matter what happens, something terrible, there's something positive. And it took me years to get to that point to accept it. And then, unfortunately, people give me lots of examples and I had to accept that I was wrong. But it is true. And you guys have just done so well. And you maximize them, everything. You're maximizing it as well. And just looking at your pictures, you could tell, for me, I was like, I see you pitch. I was like, I really want them to come on the podcast. You could tell you guys had such a connection, genuine fun, great chemistry. Yeah. Usually a photo could be just like doesn't really tell me anything. But as soon as you come on talking, you could tell you're both different, but literally it works so well as a combination. So I think it's going to be such success for you guys. I'm really looking forward to hearing more.
Thank you so much, Lee. That means a lot. It really does. Because we still, even though we've been at it for about 2 years now, we still feel like we're just at the beginning. And, we really are, you're always trying to find your footing and, your purpose in that and keep refining your skills. And, because we just started doing this as midlife women on our own, knowing nothing about social media or how to do any of this stuff. It was hilarious. So having some encouragement like that it's really meaningful.
No, it's great. It's like such a good double act when you come on and you just, like I said, it works so well. It really does. It's such a natural flow as well. For me, it's just so easy just listening to both of you. I don't have to put any work in to keep the conversation going, and it's not like one of them's run out of something to say, the other one's not got a word in or anything like that. It just flows like so well there as well. But I mean, you're 2 years in, and you're probably right that you're only just getting started. You imagine where you'll be in 5 years' time, and the help that you've given to people there as well. Because I know like other guests that they're trying to do their things on their own, and one of the things that they all seem to look for is to find people to collaborate with, because it can be an isolating thing to do it on their own, because you're dealing with things that's a lot of bad memories and experiences, and you want to do it in a positive way, but it doesn't mean it's easy when you guys have got each other there as friends and like partners in it. It's so much easier there as well. So that's great.
Thank you. I'm glad you could see that, because that's exactly how we feel. And we deeply, deeply appreciate you having the space that people like us could share our story, because, some people enjoy listening to this type of podcast or that type of podcast, but giving that space for people to talk and just open up and be transparent, it's a beautiful thing to have, and it's a gift in itself.
For me, when I set the podcast up, I actually asked some of my clients, what would you want? Because a lot of mental health podcasts are very dry. It's two therapists talking, and as a therapist, I find it boring. So I wanted people to come on and tell their stories. As a therapist, you don't judge anybody. So because the idea is that what my clients were saying to me is that they want to hear somebody's story that they can relate to, and then they want to feel inspired by. So, and I wanted it as diverse as possible, which is exactly what I've had. It's been crazy there. So, and with yourselves, listening to your story, it covers everything. People are gonna, that they're gonna relate to what you guys have been through, and then feel absolutely inspired by it there as well. So, perfect guest to have on. So, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.